given the next one is a Stephen King film, so therefore impossibly scary and probably incredibly bad. But
yes.
That one with the car, well, there are many Stephen King films with cars, but I suppose at least this one doesn't have a Green Goblin truck and a magical meteorite making them come to life, but it may as well have done, from what I recall of Christine.
Yes, Christine, set in the late 70s, textbook geek Arnie Cunningham, played by Keith Gordon, finds himself inexplicably drawn to beaten up old 50s Plymouth Fury, and to the surprise and consternation of his family and friends, he buys the rust bucket and devotes himself to fixing up a car that, spoilers, is haunted, or at least has a mind of its own, like a psychotic Herbie. As Arnie grows increasingly obsessed with the car, his manner and demeanour changes entirely, like a psychotic fawn's, while the car, Christine, spends the off hours murdering anyone who had slighted Arnie previously. It's based on Stephen King's Frankly Silly book, and this is frankly silly. Even bearing in mind that Britain's a bit less of a car-obsessed culture than the States, expecting haunted car to scare anyone beggars belief. Despite that, or perhaps because of it, I kind of liked Christine. I don't know if I've seen this before. I know I've read the book when I was a kid, and it was hot garbage, but this sort of leans into the garbageness of it. The practical effects work is actually pretty good. Again, one of the Carpenter hallmarks. He knows how to do this kind of thing pretty well. That's as convincing as a self-healing car can be. And I kind of liked the hammy, cheesy performances from, well, everybody in it. It's handled quite cartoony. It leans into the ridiculous nature of it, which is enough to make it fun, again, as long as you take none of it seriously whatsoever.
Yeah.
Definitely not essential Carpenter material, but I did enjoy it way more than, say, Big Trouble in Little China, for example, so you can make of that what you will.
I'm not sure if I did fully apologise to Scott, in which case, if I didn't, I will now. I'm very, very sorry, Scott, and I certainly apologise to our listeners too, that I am not well prepared for this film because this podcast, I didn't watch a great many of these, so I've not been sleeping well, and then my weekend being wiped out with unexpected happenings that I've not watched a lot, but I think I have watched Christine in the past, but remember almost nothing of it, so I have nothing worthwhile to say. But from what you're talking about, Scott, it does sound like that leading into the ludicrousness of the setup is probably the only way to go. If you take this at all seriously, it's just going to be intolerable.
Yeah. And I think that was what's happened with the production of it. It doesn't seem like it's taking anything particularly seriously. I'd be mortified if it actually was, because if people were taking this serious, if this was Carpenter's serious attempt to scare people with a haunted car, then it is awful. But if you think of it as being a bit self-referential, then it's pretty funny. It's just such a ridiculous high-level concept that I think it kind of works just on the basis of it just being a daft, almost parody of a horror film.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Herbie, and that was in my head too. Thinking about Christine, it does sound like it's just a slightly more adult version of The Love Bug and all of its sequels. Herbie is what comes to mind. Or Stephen King does The Love Bug.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm glad they're not taking it serious. I'm sure the book is incredibly po-faced and meant to be taking itself seriously.
Oh, yes. From what I recall from like 20 years ago, I guess, the book does take itself incredibly seriously because it's a Stephen King work and is therefore, well, hot garbage,
as you mentioned earlier, yes. Yes, with all of Stephen King's trademark neologisms and trademark terrible writing. Now, I'll give that the man can produce an interesting plot, and there are a few films based on Stephen King films, although typically not horror, that I find very enjoyable films. But he can't write that plot for Toffee. No.
Yes.
Yeah, but we move on to a film that I have seen because obviously I hate Scott, which is why I wanted him to suffer all of these films alone, but I don't know him entirely, so I did watch some of them.
It's not Uwe Ball, so...
No.
Everything's a step up.
Yes.
Establish a baseline.
I suppose that I have let you down here, Scott, in that I said I was going to do this podcast with you, whereas I refused point blank to do the Uwe Ball one because, unlike you, I don't have a terrible problem with self-loathing. I just have a problem with Scott loathing.